if you understand the business, then pricing is a derivative of that, right? So if you understand what are the cost elements to it, you will be able to do the pricing.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
Man, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the financial relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is Love Sonoria. Here are 3 things you want to know about Love before we start. He is the Director of Operations at ChargePoint. He's held a title of Global Revenue Assurance and Pricing Head, and he brings to us a mix of both finance and pricing. I look forward to the perspectives. Welcome, Love.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, how did you get into pricing?
So it's all just started, post I qualified, and I was lucky enough to be into pricing. I don't want to go into the traditional finance area. So I choose pricing, area which excites me. It's involved a lot of business interaction. It's a business partnership role. It's different, very different from traditional accounting role. So that was, exciting to be in the pricing.
Yeah, and it seems that you moved out of pricing, or do you still consider yourself part of pricing?
Not now in my current role, but yes, if I look at my overall career span, it's like 10 years of plus experience in pricing only.
Right, nice. And then I mentioned in the intro that you held a title of Global Revenue Assurance. What does that mean? What is revenue assurance, and how is that different from pricing?
So it just the post, once you establish a contract with the customer, right? So I would say it's like order to cash cycle. So here comes the pricing is like once you agree to and contract with the customer, it's all the pre-sale stage and the sales stage. Right. So in the pricing, what happens, you offer some product to the customer, you do customized pricing. Then what happens, customer agrees on your price. Then there is a whole lot of contracts like MSA, SOWs agreed with the customer. And once the contract is established with the customer, it's signed by both the party. Then comes the part of order to cash cycle, which is like you have to recognize your revenue, which is the top line for the companies. And that is very important part, because if your company is listed, it's like what, the share market, it's all the investor look at your top line. And you have to recognize the revenue based on the applicable accounting standard. If it is company US GAAP compliance, you have to see it's ASC 606 compliance or not. And then you have to recognize the revenue. You have to bill the revenue to the customer and to realize the cash, right? So it's the order to cash cycle. You have to get the order and you have to convert into the cash. That's how it pronounced.
Yeah, I love how public companies focus a lot on revenue recognition and when we can recognize it, and so that's an important thing for running our business. But if we just talk about order to cash for a second, did you see, or do you often see places where we leak profit, where we got an order for X number of dollars, but the cash wasn't X number of dollars at the end?
So see, there is always be a difference between what you recognize revenue as per the common accounting standards and what you realize, right? So in accounting, there is a concept of accrued, right? So if you deploy, say if in the IT industry, if you deploy so many number of resources, if you, submit the timesheet to the customer, right? So your revenue is accrued, you have delivered that services. But if as per the payment contract, if you're able to recognize the cash even after 1 year or 6 months, right? So that's a difference between cash and the revenue. So billing.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm actually less interested in revenue and the revenue recognition part. I know a lot of companies are, absolutely. But what I'm really interested in is if we get an order for $1 million, how often do we not get paid $1 million cash when it's all done, right? Was there leakage in the process that we just didn't see because of errors in invoicing or errors in the way we collected money, things like that? Do we often see errors like that?
Very rarely. So if customer has accepted the delivery, right, and it's very rarely that the customer doesn't pay the amount, right. So it's very rarely, unless there are some delivery issues.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's talk about IT pricing. First off, you said you were passionate about IT pricing. So tell me what you mean when you say the words IT pricing.
So I would say in terms of any pricing, let's say specific to the IT pricing, if you understand the business, right, then pricing is a derivative of that, right? So if you understand what are the cost elements to it, you will be able to do the pricing. Pricing is the secondary and the understanding business is the first part. So let's take about the IT pricing. For example, if say customer want to develop a software, right, and he approaches 3-4 different vendors, that he floated the RFP. He shared his requirement that this software should contain this, and you give me the price. Now there can be a different model, right? It could be fixed price, it could be T&M basis, it could be a percentage based on customer revenue, it could be based on the outcome, or it can be based on a predefined output. Like for example, in a hardware industry, like number of CPU, number of monitor, if it's a say help desk ticket process. So as a vendor, how vendor approach, because first of all, they understand what's the requirement, what's the scope of work. Then within an IT industry, I would say 60 to 70% of cost is the manpower cost, right? And depending upon the location of the geography mix of the resource, right? For example, if a resource is based in US, Europe, obviously it will be a high cost area. And within Europe, you have low cost center. Within US, you have a near shores, which is low cost location. And the IT industry work with a mix of resources, right? So say 80%, 90% resource based in either India, Philippines, some part of say Mexico, right, to deliver the work. And then say 5 to 10% of resource are at on-site near to the customer location, understand what the work is. So based on the location mix, geography mix, the experience mix, the skill mix, the niche skill versus non-niche skills, all those parameters come into a picture when arrive at a costing in a proposal, right? So while I would say being from a vendor side, they evaluate that what's their resource mix, then how much will be the travel cost, then all other factors adds in, right? If there is an quality requirement, is there any warranty requirement? So all those top ups keep on adding. So it's like a la carte. If you select A, B, C, and D, then it's come to the pricing. So, and depending upon the geography, it has a risk of foreign exchange as well. It has a SLA risk. If what is your SLA overreach and all. So all these factors add, then obviously there will be nominal margin those companies make. And if it's a public listed company, they have some requirement of meeting to the shareholder expectation of net profit. So all those added up, it gives you the price, right? And depending upon different industry, some companies have their inbuilt software to do the pricing. Some, even the high company, do it on Excel. So it depends how their pricing set work.
Okay, so Love, I hate doing this to you, but I completely disagree with what you just said. And so let's have a conversation about this, because I'd love to understand your thinking and I'd love to share with you my thinking. So I take what you just said as a really good explanation of what our costs are. And I would also say this would be our floor price, meaning we would never want to sell below this price. But I've always thought of pricing as charging based on what my customer's willingness to pay is, and not about what our costs are. What did it cost us to create this or do this? So do you disagree with me, or what do you think on that?
So I would say it depends upon the competitive scenario, right? For example, if it is a very, it depends. For example, if you are the only vendor to the customer, then you have an edge. But if it's a complete transparent RFP, then right now what happens, you have a e-tender process in most of the big companies, right? And you can see where you are in terms of the pricing, right? So I would say pricing might be at a second, third level, but quality comes at first. But given the transparency of the process in the big companies, it adds a weightage to your overall budget from the customer perspective. If you are the only vendor to the customer, yes, and if you are a goodwill vendor, right, in terms you have premium to your product, then you can ask if you have a unique product which you can sell. Obviously, so think from a vendor perspective, no one want to lose a deal from a high price perspective, right? Given the very competitive scenario.
Yes.
You might disagree to that, right? But look at from a scenario where all IT players are hunger for their revenue growth.
Yeah. So if I were going to say what I just heard you say, and I'm going to put it in words that make me comfortable, if that's okay, and that would be, we figured out what our costs are. We know we're in a really competitive situation, so we want to bid the lowest price that we're willing to accept. And so that would be the price we would set it at. And
not at the first go. Obviously, you have to see, which level you are in terms, what is your, for example, you will get a Apple phone, right? And similarly, you will get another company phone. The premium Apple phone comes, right? The customer want to buy it, right? Obviously, it has its own floor price based on his, say, Apple profit benchmark, based on Apple cost, based on Apple, other areas, right? So Apple product has its own quality with price. Similarly, you will get a Samsung phone, and you'll get even say any other company phone, right? Philips phone, like, or Motorola phone, but it's the customer to choose, right? So there are different vendors, and if you talk about vendor, they have different cost strategies as well. They have different qualities, but if customer want to choose the high quality, they have to pay the high price, right? So no, quality never comes cheap. That's a fact, right?
Yep. Okay, so that was a perfect answer, because now what I just heard you say was, I'm going to differentiate my product and I'm going to charge based on the level of differentiation, right? How my product is different or better than my competition, and can I get away with that? And so I think those are absolutely spot on. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of translating this, because what I find is most of the time when I disagree with people, we actually agree, we just use different words. So as a finance person, can you help me understand something that I'm struggling with, right? I don't know the answer to yet. How do big companies think about subscriptions? As a consumer, I'm getting tired of subscriptions, right? I've subscribed to so many different things that I've got subscription fatigue, and I'm trying to figure out how to get rid of subscriptions. How do big companies manage that process?
Subscription in terms of what? Like if they are using any vendor for their services, or like what?
Yeah, so companies are going to have Salesforce as a subscription. They're going to have maybe another CRM or a finance package as a subscription, and right. So nowadays, everything they're buying is a subscription. So are they? How do they manage the fact that they've committed to, or they're locked into all these subscriptions?
So it depends upon the IT landscape, I would say, or the overall IT theme the company is going, right? For example, there might be 10,000s of applications which a company is using, but if overall IT landscape that they want to, reduce the IT budget, or few of the application are going redundant. For example, if you're moving from, say, Oracle to SAP, right? All those applications which are Oracle linked, they will go, dumb, say, over the period of 2 years, 3 years. So that's how they will plan their IT landscape. And they, right now, everything is moving on cloud, right? For example, even. So most of the company, for example, there are companies which are using physical server. There are the companies which are using virtual server, right? So it's about how the IT theme of the company, or the IT architect, how the IT landscape is focusing on, and each company has their own vision that they want to build or change.
Yeah, I can see how a bunch of IT, in fact, a bunch of companies I've been involved with try to move everything to the cloud if they can, which is nice. But imagine that you're going to sell to, we're not talking $1 million products. Now we're talking $1,000 a month products to some department. it isn't really an IT problem anymore. Now it's a departmental problem. And are they managing the $1,000 a month or whatever it happens to cost them to run this SaaS product? It seems to me that this is an area that at least us consumers are feeling pain. I would guess companies are feeling that pain as well.
I would say nobody, if depend upon the application to application, right? So if it is very, I would say the decision of life and death to an application, for example, it is very required by the business, right? So obviously they will need it in terms, and nobody want to lose their old data if they are not migrating to any future product. If there is no other option B, right, then there is only option A, right?
Yep.
And nobody and anybody can. I would say people don't mind paying, say, $10, $20 a month, or even $100 just to keep the thing as it is, unless it is doesn't require.
Right. So the key is getting your foot in the door, and then they'll just keep paying you. So.
Yeah, if it is a very business critical, for example, if I don't require, Netflix subscription, right? So if I watch movies once in a month, or if I keep on watching once in a couple of months, I don't mind paying small dollar for that, $10 maybe a month. I'll keep on watching it. I'll just relate to that.
Nice. Okay. The other thing you mentioned to me that you'd be interested in talking about is COVID pricing. And here we are, hopefully near the end of COVID, since we have vaccines that are supposedly available. What do you think is going to be coming in the future, and how do you think that affects pricing?
So COVID has hit, I would say, IT industry generally a lot. It's not only IT industry, I would say, because IT industry is depending upon their customer. So if the customer of IT industry is like hotel, hospitality, airlines, right? So they are badly hit. Even if a customer is like within even a shopping mall, a small shop, right? Or even it's a garment industry. So these are the area which are worst hit by the IT industry. So if a customer base of IT industry are linked to that, right, they're highly hit and they have reduced their staff. Most of the company has reduced their staff. It's all across the globe, right? Not specific to any particular industry. So obviously they have their margin pressure, they have cost pressure. It will bounce back. Once it bounce back, they will obviously charge back from their customer. If the company has taken a debt or a loan from a bank to pay for his salaries, they have to repay the debt. They have to repay the interest cost. So they will recover it, and it will come to the customer.
Yeah. So you think prices are going to go up because of all of the expenses that companies had to incur in the near term in the COVID times. So
Yes,
prices will end up going up to recover those.
My view is yes.
Yeah. And so from my perspective, that has nothing to do with willingness to pay, except if every company does that, then there's no competitive alternative that says, oh, I'm going to continue to charge the old prices. And so it's almost implicit collusion where we've all said, hey, look, our costs went up, we have to raise prices. And now people are going to pay higher prices because the whole industry does that. I could see how that would work.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Love, thank you so much for your time. This has just been fascinating. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Well, you can connect me over my mail ID or over the LinkedIn. That will be there. It's lovesanoria1984@yahoo.co.in.
Yep, and we'll have a link to your LinkedIn page in our show notes, so that'll be easy for us to find. Thank you. I appreciate that. So episode 105 is all done. I'd like to make a quick, very somber note, if I may. Last week, my father died. And as my siblings and I reminisced and we looked at photos, it struck me that both he and my mom came from really humble beginnings. He was the first person in his family to go to college, and yet they raised 3 successful kids. And when I look at the success that I've been able to achieve and see where he started, first, I'm grateful for everything he did to launch me into my life. And second, I'm inspired. And I'm inspired for you. Because if he could do it, so could you. My advice that comes directly from him: never give up, work hard, take the long view, and especially laugh a lot, just like my dad. Finally, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast or about pricing, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact.